He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, my friends. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. We have legal anarchy in the state of Wisconsin. Legal anarchy because one despot in a black robe decided she wanted to go national and draw attention to herself as she drags the state of Wisconsin into anarchy. Now let's take a step back and see what's taking place here, because it can happen in your own state. Yes, there was an election in November. You know, people are told for good government purposes, get out there and vote. Well, they did. They threw out the Democrats and they put in the Republicans. Republicans didn't hide their agenda. The governor of Wisconsin, now, Scott Walker, among other things, said, look, we got to pull back on these government unions and collective bargaining. And that message, more than any other, resonated with the people of Wisconsin. And they turned out and they voted. They elected him governor. He follows an extremely irresponsible left-wing ideologue governor named Doyle, who was abusing the taxpayers at every turn, as was the Democrats, as were they, in the state legislature. So the people decided, through a legitimate state constitutional means, to address this. So they did something they've rarely done in Wisconsin. They turned the whole state over to the Republicans. Well, the unions weren't going to allow that, particularly the government unions. The Democrats weren't going to allow that, and the big media, well, they weren't going to allow it either. So the Senate Democrats, now in a minority, they don't like the outcome of the election, and neither do their bought and paid for union bosses. But they don't have the votes to stop the agenda that the people in Wisconsin just voted for. So what do? They use the rules of the Senate against the people. Not against the Republicans, not against the governor, against the people of Wisconsin. And they leave the state. They leave the state. They leave their responsibilities. Because they do not want to honor the electorate. They don't like the results. And they figure they're going to do whatever they can to undermine them. So what that means, you folks in Wisconsin who voted, is that a small cabal of leftist hoodlums disenfranchised you or attempted to. Did Republican state senators leave Wisconsin when the Democrats controlled it? No. Then, all over the country, public and private sector union bosses sent out emails and faxes and phone calls. Everybody head to Madison. Make as much noise as you can. Bring your signs. Take vacation leave. Pretend you're sick. Take sick leave. If you're retired, come on over. We need your help. All the rabble-rousers showed up. And while you're at it, let's empty the colleges, too. Madison, obviously known as a very left-wing town. Bring the high school students. Bring your kids. And so they poured into Madison. They poured into the Capitol building. And they were screaming and chanting, threatening people, bullying people, pushing around reporters, trying to block their cameras. But they still lost. They still lost. The vote was had. But they don't like the vote that occurred in the state legislature. They don't like the vote that occurred in the state Senate. They don't like the fact that the governor signed the bill that he said he would sign. So a Democrat operative, a former elected official in the Wisconsin legislature, he forum shopped. He found one of their favorite liberal, lowest court judges, and so the temporary restraining order. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't believe that guy thought he would get a ruling favorable. That was a Hail Mary, but he threw it right to her. And this lovely lady, just look at her picture. This lovely lady, she caught it. She was thrilled to get it. Now, first of all, what this tells you, whether they lose elections, whether they lose votes in state legislatures, it doesn't matter. By hook or by crook, you are not allowed to effectively or successfully challenge the left. You're just not. Whether it's the environment, whether it's health care, whether it's collective bargaining, you, ladies and gentlemen, are not allowed to reverse course. I don't care how much you pay in taxes, how miserable the health care system's going to be. I don't care how many illegal aliens are crossing into your town. It doesn't matter. You have no say. Now, you can go through the motions according to the left. You can go through the motions and vote. And if the outcome is one that they like, they'll let it stand. But if it's an outcome they don't like, they're not going to let it stand. They're going to disenfranchise you in every way they know how. If they can't get what they want by leaving town, they'll go to a liberal activist judge. And if they couldn't get what they wanted from her, well, they'll go to the Secretary of State, who will slow down the process of actually implementing the law so that the left-wing locals can cut their deals with the government unions real fast before the law takes effect. If that doesn't work, well, they'll use the bureaucracy to punish you. This is what I mean. It's a soft tyranny. Absolutely a soft tyranny. That's what it is. You look at Wisconsin. What is the law in Wisconsin today? What is it? Now, here are the 4 elements for a temporary restraining order, at least the ones I'm used to in federal court. And the plaintiffs, that is the hack Democrat ex-state legislator, had to prove these 4 elements. Not 1, not 2, all of them. Number 1, likelihood of success on the merits. Well, they say, what is this, the basis of this case? They say that the Senate Republicans didn't follow the rules, the transparency rules, the open meeting rules, and yet they got a ruling from the bureaucrat, the state civil servant, the parliamentarian, that said they could do exactly what they could do, what they did. And by the way, that guy advised Democrats too, or gal. Likelihood of success on the merits. The judge said they're likely to succeed on the merits. So, sounds to me she's already made up her mind. That element, likelihood of success on the merits, is really supposed to be a slam dunk. Not a 50-50 proposition, not a 60-40 proposition, a slam dunk. Number 2, irreparable harm. So let me get this straight. If this law goes into effect, there's irreparable harm. How? Well, Mark, we'll lose some of our collective bargaining rights. No, you can go to court and sue and challenge the law, but this is a restraining order to prevent it from going into effect. In other words, it's in essence an emergency order because the situation is so dire. Number 3, that less harm will result to the defendant if the temporary restraining order issues than to the plaintiffs if it does not. Well, this is very interesting to me. The plaintiff in this case, I don't even know how this guy has standing. What's his standing? You can't just roll into court and challenge something as a taxpayer or a party member or an ex-official. What is the guy standing? And number 4, that the public interest, if any, weighs in favor of the restraining order. The state's almost $4 billion in hock. The elected officials have decided this is what they need to do to get spending under control at the local and state level. What they have done is not unethical, it's not immoral, it's not illegal, it's perfectly legitimate. But the left disagrees with it, adamantly. What did I say? Citing repeatedly Frederick Bastiat, the great French philosopher. What did I say? When the law is used to plunder, what does the law become? And when you try to use the law to defend yourself, it's used against you. Now, in addition to everything I've just said, we have death threats. Death threats against legitimately elected public officials. Death threats. And barely a word is said. Barely a concern is raised. It wasn't that long ago when the liberal media and the ruling class were trying to concoct, to fabricate an environment of violence relating to talk radio and Sarah Palin and whatever it was they were trying to brew, which was absolutely a joke. They tried to link it to a mentally ill mass murderer. It was the most bizarre thing I'd ever seen. You too? And here we actually have death threats being made by union thugs against legitimately elected public officials. And instead of denouncing this, we had President Obama, when he decided to appear, telling us, don't be so hard on public sector unions. We need these folks. While he, behind the scenes, and his DNC chairman, Tim Kaine, who wants to be governor of a right-to-work state, we call it Virginia, were conspiring behind the scenes to help turn out the angry hordes, the mobs. The President of the United States and the leader of one of the major parties in this country helped to foment the mob activity and the anger that was going on in Madison, Wisconsin, in that Capitol building, and, ladies and gentlemen, goes on as I speak. 8 of those brave Republican state senators are now being targeted with all the resources that national unions can bear to get them recalled and thrown out of office. Would that not be an injustice? What would that say to others who dare to stand up and speak out for you? This is what we are up against, and you're only getting a taste of it. That's Wisconsin. There's Ohio. There's Indiana. There's other states. And then, of course, there's Washington, D.C., where the President of the United States and the head of the DNC, Tim Kaine, who were behind the rabble-rousing in Wisconsin, what do you think they're going to do in less than 3 weeks when the temporary continuing resolution is up? How do you think they're going to behave at the national level? You think they'll pull the same stunts? You think they'll drag out the same thugs? Oh, I bet they do. They're hanging on as best they can with their fingertips, as best they can. This is all about brute power, raw, brute power. They despise the electoral process unless the outcome is rigged for them. They despise the judicial process unless it's an activist judge who rules for them. Most of all, they despise you. They have forgotten that you're in charge and they are to represent you. They don't give a damn about you. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.